I learned one of the craziest ways to tell if it's okay to plant your garden from an Amish farmer. Let's go. So with your cold weather stuff, like here we have some radishes, there's lettuce and spinach, you don't have to worry as much about a late frost because they're gonna survive no matter what. It's the warm weather stuff that you have to worry about. You see, if we get a frost here, it'll slow the growth down, but they have built-in antifreeze into the plants that basically causes the sugars that are created through the sun to consolidate in the leaves, and since sugar water freezes at a much colder temperature, all these crops basically just get sweeter as it gets colder, and then when the warm weather returns, the sugar goes back down into the roots as an energy store or gets put into more future growth. So these they don't really mind too much if it gets cold, whereas the warm weather stuff, like your tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, all those beautiful summer crops, they're not as fond of a good frost. Now I've heard of a lot of different wives' tales over the years, but nothing actually holds true like this trick that I'm going to talk about. The first trick that I've heard is that if you wait until after morels start popping up, that it's safe to plant. That's because morel mushrooms are very temperature specific. The only problem is they can actually start to bloom when the weather gets warm and then stop blooming when the weather gets cold. They're not necessarily always correlated to a frost. The second wives' tale that I've heard that says it's safe to plant outside is based around the maple tree. And essentially when the sap stops running in the maple tree, means that it's safe to plant outside. Now there is some scientific evidence that shows that this could be accurate, but not nearly enough of a correlation for me to gamble my entire garden's worth of plants on that one simple statistic alone. Now basically the science does say that the sap is running in a maple tree when it's above freezing during the day and below freezing at night. And basically what this does is it creates pressure, and the pressure of cold weather below freezing, specifically at 32 degrees, when your garden would die, 32 degrees pushes sap from the leaves back down into the roots. But then when it's above freezing during the day, above 32 degrees, the sap then goes from the roots up into the leaves. And that sugar is actually last year's energy store, which helps create new blossoms and buds. And that sap flow, when it stops, means that the weather is above 32 degrees, which is again the point at which your garden would die if it went below that level. So there is some scientific evidence to prove this. The problem is I myself have tapped maple trees, and I've noticed many times during a spell of a week or two when the sap will stop. All right, and the third wives' tale that I've heard is that it's safe to plant outside when robins lay their eggs. Now, again, this seems pretty probable. I mean, I know that robins won't lay their eggs if it's below freezing because obviously the cold weather would end up killing the egg. However, robins will lay their eggs up until almost July. And so if you don't have robins in your area, it's really hard to tell when they're laying their eggs. You know, if you have a bird feeder or a bird nest and you can see them laying eggs, I guess is maybe a good rule of thumb to go by. But because it's such a wide range that again, you're either planting really, really late or you're getting really lucky. It's not something that I would personally gamble with. But again, that's just another wives' tale that I've heard, but it's not super reliable. Now, the trick that I learned from Isaiah, our Amish friend and farmer, when I was growing up, I went to an Amish farm and would talk a lot to the Amish farmers that were at the farm. And one thing that I learned was how they could time their planting dates so perfectly. They don't actually, believe it or not, they don't go by a calendar. They don't go by a specific date. They don't have computers to tell you what the average last frost date should be. What they do is based on tradition, and that tradition is based around the plum tree. And the reason why the plum tree is so reliable is because when plums will blossom, you have approximately a 75% chance that there will not be a frost after that point. And I think that's so cool. And what Isaiah was telling me was that that is how they have based their planting schedule for their entire life. And generationally, that is the tree that they have used. Not the apple tree, not the pear tree, not the peach tree, but the plum tree. And I think that is so cool. And given how high of a probability it is enough for me to put a pretty good stake on planting out our garden. So much so that the very next video, we're gonna be planting out our garden. because I believe in putting your money where your mouth is. And granted, there is a 30% chance I could be eating my words, but I trust my friends and my farmers that have been doing this for their whole life, and their parents and their grandparents and their grandparents' parents have been doing for their whole lives. I'm willing to bet on that. And so I think it's such a cool thing. And I've been doing this for years. Again, I talked to Isaiah back when I was in high school, when I went out to his family owned an Amish, basically an Amish grocery store, where if a truck would overturn, they would buy those goods at a discounted price and would then sell them at a very steep discount. And my grandma would frequent that store a lot, and they had a farm on the property. And having talked to so many of them, they're all super knowledgeable, they're a wealth of information, and they're super friendly to talk to. Isaiah was one person that I really gravitated towards and taught me all these things that I know, and so many of you have enjoyed these kind of Amish tips series. Now, unfortunately, I don't think Isaiah would really want to be on camera. I don't think that would be his thing. I also don't think that they believe in that. I'm not entirely sure. So the best thing I can do is just share this information with you. And if it resonates with you, great. If not, I totally get it. A lot of you feel very safe trusting technology or averages, or you feel very safe waiting for a certain date that historically has been very safe, whether that's Mother's Day, whether that's Memorial Day, whatever, right? I feel very safe looking at the plum tree and knowing. It was funny because I asked Isaiah, I said, well, if you're only right 70% of the time, what do you do the other 30%? He said, well, we don't put all of our eggs in one basket. We save plants aside in the greenhouse for that what if case scenario. And it's just a risk that you're willing to take, because the earlier you can get a garden going, the more you can grow and the more you can harvest. And so I think it's really, really cool. Now, the final thing I'd mention too is that everyone's going to be growing different plum trees. So I don't know if this necessarily holds true to all cultivars. I know some will bloom sooner than later. So maybe a tip that I would go by is an adoption, where I usually will wait till about 50% of the tree is bloomed out, because that way, if it happens to be really early, it's just, maybe I don't need to, but that's what he was telling me. I think it's super cool. So Isaiah, even though you're not watching this video, I want to thank you so very much for this information. It's made a huge impact on my life, and I know it's made a huge impact on a lot of our viewers' lives as well. So thank you so much. And if you did enjoy, hit the like button. If you've heard some of these wives' tales, and if they've worked for you, let me know in the comments box below. If you've heard of other wives' tales that I didn't mention in today's video, let me know as well. I don't think that they're all wrong. I think some of them are really funny. I'd love to hear what you've heard, and I'm curious to know if they work for you. So as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider checking this one out. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you so much for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. If you haven't subscribed yet, it's free. Consider doing that. We upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, rain or shine. And if you need any garden tools, supplies, or seeds, check out MIgardener.com. We got you covered. See you guys in the garden. Bye.